everyone. It is great to be back in the radio station, not as the Experience Live, but we're live with our brand new podcast, the Think Tank Unplugged. I'm excited about this new space and to share with you on this new platform. During these episodes, we're going to discuss the marketplace ministry in business. We will be operating two lanes, the leadership space and the relationship space. My passion has been and continues to be growing and developing people. And so I know you all know me from the Experience Live space, which was a great platform, a great opportunity to share with you for almost 3 years. But now we're shifting more so into the ministry space and in the business space. This is an opportunity for me to share with you some nuggets, some things that I've learned in ministry for almost 28 years, being in business of almost 20 years. I believe these spaces and these lanes are going to be so imperative to your growth in your business and as well as in your ministry. I am a firm believer that in growing people, as we grow them and develop them, it will grow numbers, it will grow spaces and opportunities for you to grow and develop. And so today we're going to talk about the psychology of the person and the organization in which you operate in. So today we're going to talk from the topic of mind your business. And some of you may be saying, what does that mean, mind your business? Mind your business is not from the standpoint of you being nosy, but the business of your mind is something that I think that we don't actually pay a lot of attention to. We focus on a lot of things, but we don't really focus on what is the mind really saying to us? How do we focus on the mind? So when we look at the mind comes from the study of psychology. It comes from the Greek word psyche, which means breathing, a breath. It's the principle of life or the soul. And then when we look at logos, it's the study of. Therefore, the psyche and the logos means the study of the mind. I want to pose some thought-provoking statements to us to consider on today. Have you ever wondered why people do what they do? Or what makes you think the way you think or act the way that you do? We pride ourselves on being different and unique. That's a good thing, but it also can be a bad thing. We assume that no one has the power, that much power over us or our thoughts or emotions. But the truth of the matter is, it does not control how we respond, but it's based on how people observe our actions, what we do and what we say. And so we're going to seek out and understand what it means or what happens in our mind as it relates to decision making, what we allow in our sacred space, and how we respond to the unknowns in our life. I'm reminded of a story growing up. We used to play this game growing up, 1, 2, 3 red light. But you got to keep your eyes closed. And in playing that game, when you got to 1, 2, 3 red light, you had to pause in that stance. But at any moment you flinch or glitch, you were out of the game. So 1, 2, 3 red light is one of those games that I love playing, but also it kept you on your edge. It kept you in that moment of excitement. It kept you in that space of saying, okay, now I really need to get to the person that's calling out the numbers, but I don't want to get out before it's my time. That's what life does. Our mind sometimes times out. Sometimes it hits a plateau. We don't know which way to go. We don't know what to do. And so sometimes we get stuck in the space of decision. We get stuck in that valley of decision making and we don't know how to come out of it. And so we allow ourselves to get in a place of unknowns, which can sometimes be exciting, but it can sometimes be a very scary place because the unknowns, I don't really have an answer for. I just know it just happens over time. And so when we look at what we have just been through or come out over the last 3 years, we can say March 15, 2020 forever changed the landscape of the church and the world as we know it. We hit a global pandemic, something that we have never seen in over 100 years. Many people thought that as of Easter 2020, we would be out of this pandemic and things would resume as normal. Then we pushed it to July of 2020. And we said that we would go back into our places of worship, back into our places of business in the summer of 2020. Now, as we look forward, almost 3 years later, some people are now starting to transition back into their businesses. Some people were working at home and now being forced to go back into the place businesses. But when I read a statistic the other day, productivity was much better from home than it was when you went back into the physical space. So I thought about that same analogy for the church. How productive will we be if we kept virtual and the in-person experience? How much productive would it be with getting people? Number one, because we know the church has to run off of finances. That's number one. Number two, we are in the people business. Sometimes you have more people watching you on Sunday than they are in the physical space. And for some pastors and for some preachers, that can be scary because you don't know who those people are listening to you. But you can say that you're making an impact, because if you got 300 people watching you and you only have 25 people in the physical space, you can say without a shadow of doubt that you are a trendsetter. You can say that you're being impactful. You can say that you're really reaching the masses, because some people had a mega church overnight when the pandemic hit. Everybody's ministry went global in March 2020 because you were no longer in the building. You are now become the part of the physical space. We now know it now. They gave it a name, the cyberspace, or the hybrid space, which is in person and virtual. But the other thing that I like about the virtual and the physical space, we saw that space really grow as it became in business. Now you can hire a virtual assistant. That person didn't have to be in the same city, the same town that you're in, even the same state. That virtual assistant kept your calendar. He or she kept you on task. You fed them the information and they produced what you gave them. So I can see that really as a very helpful space, because there again, I can work from home, hire virtual assistants that may live in another state and yet still be productive. But the flip side of it, I didn't know my virtual assistant and they didn't really know me in the area. But there again, it gave you the opportunity to grow together. It gave you an opportunity to build a virtual space that you could grow and be creative. The other thing that I felt that was very exciting from the pandemic, entrepreneurship really grew. People were able to launch a lot of businesses during the pandemic, and they were very successful. I myself launched my eyewear line in February of 2020 during the pandemic, not really knowing how it would go. I said, oh yeah, this would be a great space, a great opportunity to do it. Not really knowing that the number one fashion commodity in the world is eyewear. Many people don't buy eyewear because they have to wear glasses. They buy eyewear because it's a fashion statement. So I find myself, myself and I, launching this space along with my partner, who showed me, he pushed me to my next level. I realized that I could do this in a virtual space. The other thing is I had to pastor and preach in a virtual space. And I got very comfortable with it, but I got uncomfortable when I had to go back into the physical space, because I found myself liking this virtual space so much that I said, hey, this is my niche. But the one thing I really wanted to really focus on, one thing that the virtual space or that the business world uses that we don't really think about, is capacity building. Capacity gives you the ability to expand beyond your reach. It gives you the ability to look at numbers, to look at data, to look at how the business world uses capacity. They use it to build numbers, they use it to look at workload, and they use it to build finances. If we look at what capacity means in the church world, it helps us to build people, it helps us to build workload, it helps you to be able to disperse through your ministry organizations who can handle what load. Gives you the opportunity to see who can really handle capacity. And I don't think we really looked at what capacity really was until we got in the virtual space. Because a lot of times when the pandemic happened, most pastors, they struggle just to give you a message on Sunday morning. Let's be honest. They struggle to give you a message on Sunday morning, and they struggle to give you some type of Bible study or group therapy or some type of study during the weekday, because it was a new space. But what I loved about it is that we grew in the space, and overnight we became a novice at the virtual space. So now I think that many of us who had to preach during the pandemic in the virtual space, I think we built up a kind of I could say, something we put on a resume to give you all some pointers on how to grow in the virtual space and how to really make it work. So when we look at capacity building, we have to look at it from God's perspective. God operates outside of capacity. His numbers was not his number one target, but his ultimate goal was to develop and to grow people. I think we got lost prior to the pandemic. It was all about numbers. How many people were coming to your place of worship? How many numbers? What it looked like financially? We were all looking at the numbers. I believe personally, as I use this term and I laugh about it now, that God put the world on house arrest March 2020. Everything stopped. Literally, the world stopped in March 2020. I believe this also, that we would not have really seen the death of George Floyd as relevant if we had not been in the pandemic. When we saw that in real time, in living color, I believe it gave us a different perspective of law enforcement. It gave us a different perspective of what social justice looks like. But it also gave us a different perspective of how the world and the church could marry together and revitalize their activism. The Black church has been so pivotal in the civil rights movement. We were so pivotal in how we saw life. Do you not realize that the Black church was the one place that you could be a leader? You could be the church was almost like, I would call it, the life support machine for the community. Everything that we needed in the Black community, the church was it. Social services was birthed out of the church. Free lunch was birthed out of the church. If you wanted to know how to be great on your job, you came to the church and they taught you that. So everything we knew was in the church. At some point, we got away from that. And I believe we made the church a business so much so we took things out of the church. And so now we have an opportunity to reinvent and recreate what church really looks like now in the 23rd century. We cannot go back and say that I want to build me a edifice, and we're going to build this mega church, and we're going on all this land, and expect that people are going to fill it up. I have something to tell to you. It won't happen. Now, if you're going to build a space, you're going to make it where so people can be creative. People might can come and use it as a studio. Small businesses might can rent out some space. You've got to be creative with what he's giving you. You got your parking lots during the pandemic were not being used. So a lot of people I saw, not necessarily in North Carolina, but I saw them use their churches as a a farmer's market. So people were able to come and bring fresh produce in a church parking lot, and you can come and get fresh produce during the pandemic. I saw it as a meeting space for kids could come and do things in the parking lot. So what am I saying to you? We've got to learn to use what we have. And so in looking at minding your business, what is in your mind that should be a part of your everyday business life, your everyday relationship life that you're not really using? And one thing that I have found is that we have reduced ourselves to a building when God is trying to tell you that the church is no longer in the building. When we say that the doors of the church are open, when the doors of the church will close. When we tell people to sow a seed, when really we want people to partner with us. We're telling people, what does it look like when you come to a church, when everything now is on a virtual space? Now churches, you don't have to come and have a meeting. We learned during the pandemic, we can have a Zoom meeting. And we can gather on Zoom for discipleship. We can gather on Zoom for new members class. We found that space to be a very workable space, and to realize now that people have come in person, I've talked to a lot of leaders. People don't want to come out for a meeting during the weekday, but they will get on a Zoom meeting. So I am encouraging you, if it worked and it's growing, don't try to go back and do something that you were doing before. To go back is almost like insane. It's like doing the same thing over and over again and not really getting any results. But if you really look at your data and you look at numbers and you look at growth and you look at where you are, a lot of churches really grew. And it wasn't so much in numbers, but you grew in development. You grew in relationships. You grew in more people spending time with family. You grew in having more intimate setting. So I remember some 20 years ago, my grandmother said this, some 20 years ago. She said, there's going to come a time and space that we're going to have church in our homes. She didn't live to see it. She died right before the pandemic happened. But we literally were having church in our houses. We did it for almost 2.5 years. And we found that, I have found that in talking to people, they're more comfortable staying at home, watching church from home. But what we have done, the church, we're starting to make people feel guilty. But you can't really have an experience at home. We had it for 2.5 years. So to make people feel guilty to come back into a physical space is almost telling people they really don't have a relationship with God. And that's really not the truth. But I want to pose this statement to you, and I think it's really, we have reduced God to a building. When he was born in a stable, but he spent his life in the crowds of people, navigating his thought life by vocalizing to the masses our life plan. I'm going to say that again because I know it was a lot in that statement. We reduced God to a building when he was born in a stable, but spent his life in the crowds of people, navigating his thought life by vocalizing to the masses our life plan. Our God's plan for our life, he never said that we had to come to a building. And whenever we quote scripture, and we use scripture to say to forsake not ourselves, assembling ourselves together, we tell people we got to come to a physical location to do that. Fellowship can happen anywhere. It can happen at Panera. It can happen at Target. It can happen anywhere. We've got to be able to think outside of the box and not stop boxing people in when really God spoke to the masses. There's a story whenever Jesus was gathered in town and the crowd was so massive, he had to get into the boat and go out into the middle of the ocean to talk to the people. Because the crowd was so much. He had to pull away so the people could see him and so the people could hear him. I can imagine. Maybe Jesus had a microphone in his throat, but I don't know how he was able to project to the people his voice. But they could hear him even in the crowd. He could get his point across. What would happen if we stopped looking at the faces of the people and the crowd and just focus on vocalizing what God really gave you? I believe we could be more impactful. I believe that we could be more strategic. And I believe we would see growth at its optimum level if we focus on not just the numbers, but focus on developing and growing people. The psychology of your church and your business has changed forever. What I have noticed is that since many churches have returned to in-person worship and businesses have shifted working from home to coming back into the building, the problem is we didn't have a plan when we left, and we don't have a plan whenever we re-entered back into the building. But the truth of the matter is that if we mind our business, meaning pay close attention to what it takes, to what we take into our psyche, we can reconstruct our churches and businesses for success if we just write a vision and make it plain. We never have a re-entry plan. I don't think a lot of churches really thought about what it looks like to re-enter back into the sanctuary. We just wanted people back into the sanctuary. We knew when they came back in, we wanted masks, we checked temperatures, we did social distancing. But it all was an awkward space of worship because now we get to worship with a mask on. We get to sing with a mask on. We couldn't touch your neighbor. You couldn't turn to your neighbor. You couldn't hug your neighbor. You couldn't even high five your neighbor because we were still unsure of how this COVID-19 was spreading. We knew it was airborne, but we didn't want to run the risk of people getting sick when we had already faced so many deaths in 2020. Many people didn't feel safe going back into a physical space. But to look at the success of your ministry and in your business, have you went back now that you re-entered and revisited what your vision looks like? What your business looks like? What does growth look like? These are the things that we have to reevaluate now that we've re-entered back into those spaces. How are you going to do business? Now how are you going to do ministry? How are you going to grow business? Are you going to grow business because you still expect the people to come to you? Or are you willing to go to where people are? That's a whole other conversation for a whole other time. We'll do a live on that one. But are you going to really look at now that people are not coming to the church, but you can go to where they are? Do you not realize there's more people that can get to you on social media than that can come into your place of worship? You can have 500 people watching you and 30 in the building. That's success to me. So when you look at numbers, you got to look at algorithms. You got to look at all this data of how successful am I really in ministry. So don't get discouraged if only 30 people come in your sanctuary, but you got 500 people worshiping. What it means to me, maybe you just might need to hire a pastor that can pastor those in the cyberspace. So now if you're looking for a new musician, maybe you need to look at hiring a new pastor on staff that can just minister to those that's in the cyberspace. Now you need to look at developing a virtual membership class, a virtual discipleship class. Now that everything is moving and changing at such a fast pace, now you need to really, now this is the time to really bring in your millennials and say, hey, how do I reach your demographic? How can I reach them on TikTok? How can I reach people in Snapchat? So now this is the time to use your millennials. And listen, don't get caught up on what they look like or what they have. They may have body piercings and tattoos everywhere. But listen, if they can come and effectively help you grow your church from a social media standpoint, it's not about what they have on. Because I'm a firm believer, if I get them to the space to help them grow, if I'm really preaching and teaching the word of God, God will do the rest of the word. All I got to do is get them there. And that does not mean I have to always bring them to the physical location. They can run your church from their house. Think about it. They can run your social media from where they're located. They don't have to come to a physical space. But at some point, y'all can meet virtually or you can meet in person. These are the things I want you to learn how to mind your business. In other words, think outside of the box. Proverbs 23:7. This is one of the most misquoted scriptures. I think we use it a lot. It says, for as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. This text helps us to understand that we have to stay focused on the goal that God has given us. The creative in all of us works from a space of applied knowledge. So the caveat of this text is the expression of what someone says or does is not necessarily what they think in their heart. When faced with a conundrum, which one do you believe? You believe what's in your heart first than what you think. This shapes the reality of who you are. In other words, what do you think about yourself? We have been so inundated of self that we don't really take time to really think, well, how do people really see me? I think that the pandemic helped us to reevaluate how we saw ourselves, what we really liked and what we really didn't like. It helped you to really redefine who you really are, because it forced us to spend time with ourselves. The other thing that I think that really helped us is that I believe during the pandemic, life was less stressful. Now that we've moved back into the hustle and bustle of things, it's about trying to get there on time. And I don't know about you, people are driving crazy. They pull out in front of you, honking their horn. Road rage has gotten bad. I think anxiety and stress levels has raised to the ultimate high. It's all because we're now feeling like we have to catch up. We got to make up time lost. But I want you to realize this, time was never lost during the pandemic. The question is, did you make good use of your time while you were in that space? Now, if you didn't, then maybe you have to make up some time. But whenever we are faced with the reality, what we think about ourselves, what you think about yourself really matters, because it's shaping you to become who you really were intended to be in the very beginning. Because I feel like whenever we were in church before, it's about what you had to put on. We were so dressed up on suit, a tie, dress, everything. Now we can come to church as a pair of tennis shoes on, a hoodie, and sneakers, and get the same experience that we got before with a three-piece suit on, high heels, and dress up. So I think though it's loosened the ability for people to come to church and worship God freely. Corporate America, they've loosened the shirt and tie. Now you can come in some tennis shoes and jeans, and you're more productive because you're more relaxed. The environment, what am I saying to you? I'm saying to you, make the environment so that you can create in that environment. Make the environment so that you can grow in the environment. Whenever you're learning to mind your business, take the limits off. There's no limits to your growth and your creativity. You're the only reason why you can't grow. I'm saying it again. You are the only reason why you can't grow. You can grow when you take the limits off. I made a post, 2 posts this week or last week, I can't remember. The first one is the psychology of your mind in business starts in your mind. Everything that we do, everything we thought of, it was birthed in our mind first. It was an idea. As a man or woman thinks in his heart, so is he. Your ministry or business was already inside of you. You just needed a way to create it. The second post I made this week is this. It says, don't think outside of the box. Think like there is no box. Whenever we realize that a box has multiple sizes, depending on the size and the make of the box. But a box in its simple form is just a box. If you look at your life was never made to be complicated, but it was made with different levels of growth on the inside of you. My question to you, what level are you on today? Whenever you're minding your business, you're thinking, I'm on a level that I can grow, I can create. And what I realize about myself, whenever I find myself in a slump, I get myself around creative people that can help me think outside the box. I can bounce ideas off of. You need people in your life that can push you to your next level. That's what creativity does. It gives you a space to grow. It gives you a space to be yourself. Whenever you're able to be yourself, you're able to be more creative. In other words, relax. Stop being so old tight. Now, I look at me called the kettle black. I'm one of these ones that I kind of live in a stressful, tight environment, but I'm learning, y'all. I'm learning. I'm trying to relax. I'm trying to grow in this new atmosphere of being more relaxed. And it's hard for somebody like me. I'm a workaholic, and I got to get it done then. And I work on it till the wee hours of the morning until I get it completed. But what I've learned in that, as I'm getting older on the road to 50, I need sleep, y'all. I need rest. I got to take care of my body because I ain't got but one. And whenever you got this one space that you're dealing with, you've got to take care of it. But I also got to learn how to mind my business, and I got to listen to my mind and my heart. It's going to tell me when it's time to slow down. It's going to tell you when it's time to accelerate. But you got to realize that no matter how far you grow in life, you can only become successful when you see yourself in a different space and in a different light. Take the limits off of how you think and allow God to create in you a clean heart and allow Him to renew a right spirit within you. And when you do this, you're able to manage and mind your business in a space that you can create, in a space that you can grow, in a space that you can become the best you that God designed and created you to be. I read a book years ago, The Purpose-Driven Life. It said if you want to know how a thing works, go back to the creator of the thing. God created you and I in His image and in His likeness. And if you want to know what your plan is for your life, consult with the creator, the ultimate creator. He'll show you your next step, and He'll show you your next design for your life. I'm so glad we had this opportunity to share this space and time together. I'm excited to be back in the studio once again. Don't count me out. I know many of you say, well, Erika, what happened? I'm back, y'all. I'm back. And now that I'm back on this space, look forward to us creating more content. But more than anything, I want you to become the best you that you can become. If no one's told you today, let me be the first to tell you I love you. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Live life and live life on purpose. Have a good day.